Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first edition of Talking Trees Live. I am so excited to be bringing you this great chat with some really wonderful arborists. I am your host, Katie Dubow, and let me introduce our first guest of the day, Jason Gaskill. Let's see, he's coming in. Hey, Jason.
Hey, everyone. Hey, Katie, how are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
So this new video series explores some of the top questions, or let's say the hottest in tree care questions. So we are here to take your questions. So please shoot us any questions that you have in the comments and Jason will answer them. Today we are talking pests. Yuck. The wicked spotted lanternfly of the East, which is what we'll be talking about with Jason. And then we'll be joined by Jess Running, who's out in Northern California, to be talking about a new pest called the Mediterranean oak borer. So stick around for that. Now, if you have any questions about spotted lanternfly, this is your chance to ask an expert. So welcome, Jason. We're really excited to learn from you. Tell us where you are.
I am at Ridley Creek State Park in southeastern Pennsylvania, just in lower Delaware County. Near Delaware.
And so Jason and I are very familiar with each other because Jason is actually my arborist. We're not that far from each other. And so spotted lanternfly is a huge issue here in my neck of the woods as well. In fact, I went outside and collected a few props / samples for us just to talk about in a little bit. But we've got a lot of people checking in and saying hi. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us and tuning in to talk about this nasty pest. So I wanted everybody to know that August is National Tree Check Month. So Jason, why do you think August would be National Tree Check Month? I know we should be looking at our trees every day of the year, but why do you think August is especially important for that?
Well, August is an important month for that because trees are really stressed at this time of the year because they've gone through the summer, they pushed out and done the hard part, pushing out in the spring, and then they've gone through the slog of summer, the heat, the drought, the crazy storms. We had a lot of crazy storms. I think the whole entire country has. Yes. And so August, you're going to start finding that the tree gets stressed by bacterium, drought stress, insects, disease, things that have attacked the tree all season long. And, if the tree has made it that long and looks pretty good, then, maybe it's a hardier tree.
And a lot of our insects, I would imagine, have emerged out of their nymph or egg stage at this point, and they are out there eating our trees. So although they eat trees at every stage, but in August, we can probably see a lot of the pests, I guess,
that's
right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you'll start getting your later generations of different insects, including the spotted lanternfly.
So let's talk an invasive plant just quickly. Do you want to explain what makes something an invasive species, an invasive insect?
Sure. So an invasive insect or species, you can have invasive species of plants, trees, bacterium, invasive species of birds, of basically anything. But, the big one here is insects. And insects are invasive when they come over from a foreign country, a foreign place, I should say. And in that place, they might have controls that might control them, like birds or biologicals like fungus, bacteria, and things like that make them sick. And then when they come here, they're unchecked. There's nothing that controls them or recognizes them at first, or maybe it takes a minute before something's able to catch up. And, that science is something that we have to study as it happens.
So they can take over like the tree behind you. So the reason Jason picked Ridley Creek Park, it's not unlike many parts of this area, right, Jason? I mean, what you guys are seeing over his left shoulder is not, or that could be his right, I don't know. This Be Live gets us all flipped around, is an infestation. So let's talk about spotted lanternfly. Where did this bug come from?
Came from kind of China, Vietnam, Thailand, parts of India. And it came here, and they think around like 2014 or maybe even a little bit earlier, based on egg carcasses. And it got here just through accidental trade into Berks County. It could have arrived on some crates. It could have arrived on almost anything, and that's why they call it the hitchhiking bug.
Oh, and ever since then, it has been, running rampant. It's all over the news here. In fact, I just saw an article in the New York Times because what states is it in currently?
So it's pretty well entrenched into Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, of course, Maryland, and it sounds like New York is expecting their arrival shortly, if not right now.
Well, let's talk about what they look like. So why don't you show us this tree? And so this is an example of what happens when you have an infestation. Jason actually told me he was getting rained on, you guys, from the honeycomb, from the sap, which is disgusting. So thank you, Jason, for taking one for the team.
Sure.
So this,
Yeah, it seems like a sunny day out here, but I'm getting rained on from the insects dropping their honeydew on me. I'll be getting a shower after this, I think. And the honeydew under the tree is kept underneath the tree pretty wet, and you can see how frothy in nature it is. You can see all the honeydew that's stuck to the tree, and it's basically a big foam of sugary substance that's just coated, and you can see puddles. It's I've heard this insect described as pretty, but once you start looking at numbers like this, it starts becoming more of like a Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom nightmare or something like that. It starts getting a little bit icky.
So Alyssa is asking what species. So what tree is that? She's saying what species are more likely to be attacked by spotted lanternfly?
Yeah, so this is the Ailanthus tree, Ailanthus altissima. So this is the Chinese sumac, or the Chinese tree of heaven. It's native to China, and this is actually a tree that they need to complete their lifestyle in. And because this tree is also an invasive species that arrived here many decades ago, and this tree, the insect just finally caught up to where this tree is now inhabited other places of the earth. So this is their favorite tree. People get mixed up with walnuts. They get it mixed up with sumac trees. They look pretty similar, but they have a smoother bark. And of course, now they're really easy to identify because you can just look for the spotted lanternfly. You can say, well, there's a tree of heaven.
Right. Yes. But it seems like I have no tree of heaven in my yard. However, it seems like they are all over lots of my other plants. Can you, Heather's asking if you can show us what the tree looks like from a distance. So maybe you could walk back and show us some of the leaves or the bracts. But
sure.
What other trees do they like?
So I guess the good question is what trees do they not like?
Yeah.
Because I've found them on nearly everything. They really like maples, red maples, silver maples. I found they do like walnuts. At first, we didn't think they liked walnuts, but really what was going on, they weren't on the bottom parts of the trunk because it was so furrowed and thick. They were actually way up in the canopy, feeding on the smaller twigs and branches. But they've also known that they like stone fruits, apples. They like orchard stuff. They like grapevines. And the thing is with the nymphs, what you're seeing when they're all in the gardens is that when they're in their first couple of instars, they're falling from trees and they're kind of lost. I call them like lost babies, and they don't really know where they're going. And those smaller instars actually eat a lot of herbaceous stuff because their mouth parts are small, so they can't actually get into the bark until they become adults. So as they grow bigger, that's when they start landing on trees to try to complete their life cycle.
That explains why the nymphs were all over my roses this year.
That's
all
right.
over them.
Yep,
yeah, not on the trees. Yep. So what are they actually doing to the plant? What is this bug doing? And you say they're using their mouth parts. They're eating the tree?
So they're sucking from the xylem of the tree and basically just drinking from the tree.
And that will eventually kill it?
Yeah, so they're creating open wounds in vast numbers. The thing with invasives, it's not necessarily a single insect that's causing damage. It's because they're unchecked and that you have millions of them. They swarm a tree. It's basically they're getting ganged up on. And what happens is that they're sucking so much sap from the tree. And they're also creating, because of all their droppings, you start getting mold on the leaves. And I'll show you this in a second. So this is called sooty mold. And you can see the blackening shining on the leaf.
Yes.
Well, when a tree starts getting covered in all this sooty mold and from all of their droppings, the tree now has a hard time photosynthesizing. So, because it's blocking out the sunlight, so you're putting on this, super dark kind of suntan lotion on the tree's leaves, so it can't, it's not getting any light anymore.
All right. So the big question is, what do we do? So we've got this invasive pest that is unchecked, has no predators. We've been having some milder winters in certain parts of our country, so they're not dying back in the winter. So what, as a homeowner, can we do?
So as a homeowner, what you could do is be mindful of what kind of trees that you have, because and if you have an arborist come out and look at your trees, they can either put you at ease and say, okay, I don't have anything to worry about. I've been to people's houses where they see the lanternflies, but they don't necessarily have the trees that they need to complete their life cycle on. So, I can set their mind at ease that way. And if you're traveling, you don't want to bring them home. So when people talk about, scraping the eggs off, which is really impractical when you talk about scraping off the tree, because they're laying their eggs high in the canopy, low in the canopy, the middle of the canopy. You're not going to climb all around a big, 80-foot tree scraping eggs off with a credit card. So the idea is that you're getting under your car, you're looking where they're going to do their hitchhiking, and that's how they're going to, you're going to bring them to your house, your home somewhere, especially if you live out of the quarantine areas. If you're in the quarantine areas, they're here, and it's something that we are going to have to deal with. We're hopeful that there's a native fungus that is actually being very detrimental to them, and in killing them off in Berks County, there's been reports that I've heard that up to 99% mortality rates from this fungus. But, that has to catch up, and that's a native fungus that's here that infested the spotted lanternfly, and now the spotted lanternfly has to get this contagion and has to spread it through its populations, and the thing is, the spotted lanternfly is going to spread out while this other thing lags behind, and we'll see how that kind of works out.
And is there a treatment? I know at my mom's house, you actually did a treatment for the trees. That's right.
So there are very effective treatments. We can do soil systemics, and we can do systemics that you spray against the trunk of the tree that systemically go into the tree, protect the tree from insects, so it's very safe for natural predators, things like that, so it's inside the tree. And so if the spotted lanternfly decides to feed on the tree, they're going to then perish. And then that's also going to protect the tree against other opportunistic insects as well, like borers, aphids, and things like that.
Got it. So Helen was asking a little bit ago that does it only affect trees that are stressed already? Because we know we've had drought, we have other emerald ash borer, other invasive pests that have come around here, trees that are just not generally taken care of very well. Does this only affect our sick trees, or is it affecting, I know you said what tree doesn't it attack?
Sure.
So I'm guessing I know your answer, but does it only attack those stressed trees?
In this case, no. There's a lot of what I call opportunistic insects that affect just stressed trees, like ambrosia beetles and things like that when the tree gets stressed, it's like ringing a dinner bell, and then those pests come running in. But in this case, a healthy tree is kind of like a nice big juicy apple. It's fresh right off the vine, and the insect's ready to feed, and there's a lot of sap flow. So that's the spotted lanternfly is unfortunately really happy with that situation. So.
And Heather is asking, do they only attack trees? So you were saying that the nymphs will attack bushes and shrubs, but what about as they grow older, as they get to become adults? Do they then still stick on bushes or shrubs, or do they go to trees?
No, they really need to be on a tree to complete their life cycle. And right now, the scientists are not sure if they complete their life cycle on maples and other trees. Now, I've for one seen spotted lanternfly mating on maples and other trees and laying eggs on the trees. Now, I can't confirm that they haven't fed on Tree of Heaven, and I know that some of the science says they need the feed on Tree of the Heaven to also mate and start the reproduction cycle. So it's something that science still needs to study, but they do need trees, because what happens is their mouth parts get too big. And so with big mouth parts, you need they want to penetrate that part, and that's really what they're looking for. I've seen lots of confirmed cases where people are seeing them totally move away from their gardens, and now they're like, oh, I don't see them anymore, and I just say, well, look up.
Yes, which is why we call Davey, because I'm not climbing that tree. I don't want to be going up in my tree, and I want to protect my trees. There are so many benefits to our trees. They provide us with shade, place for my kids to climb and have fun, not to mention all the environmental benefits that they provide as well, giving us oxygen, cooling the house. So it's really a great thing to protect our trees from invasive pests like the spotted lanternfly. So that's my soapbox for a minute. So Kim is asking, it's a great question. You talked about hitchhiking on cars, but Kim is asking about campfire wood.
Absolutely. So they will hitch a ride on and land eggs on anything that's a smooth surface. So if there was a stack of campfire wood, and it was smooth underneath, and they like laying underneath things, right? They want to protect themselves from rain, snow, wind, and things like that. So they're gonna go underneath the car or underneath the grill.
Gotcha.
Or underneath, and campfire wood stacks got cracks and crevices. So yeah, they're gonna like to hide into crevices like that and lay their eggs.
Okay. So when is the time to treat them? Treat your tree with a systemic type insecticide.
Yeah, so depending on what kind of systemic you're using, you can treat anytime during the growing season.
Okay.
So right now we're doing treatments, and we're doing treatments starting in the spring.
Okay.
So you might start your treatments that last longer in the spring, and right now we might start doing treatments that are a little quicker acting. And then toward the fall, we might start doing some treatments that are longer acting that are going to help for 2020.
Gotcha. And right over Jason's head, I know for those of you asking what a tree of heaven looks like, that's a great shot of the leaves. I don't know how many leaves they have. It looks like 16 or something, but it's a great shot of the leaves because that's a huge tree of heaven. Oftentimes I see the saplings around. I mean, they're everywhere. Right. So that's a big one. Yours might only be, 3 feet tall. So a good place to start would be getting all of those down, eradicated, right? Getting rid of the tree of heaven.
Absolutely, and that's like the biggest mode of action that like the state of Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture has taken, especially in rail yards, bus yards, airports, and things like that, where there's a lot of travel, where there's a lot of risk for spreading deep and far outside of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So they're eradicating the Atlantic tree, and the Atlantic tree doesn't have any natural benefits for our ecosystem because it's also an invasive tree. And it pretty much grows anywhere there's disturbance. That's why you see them a lot in Philadelphia, Wilmington, inside of towns. I think there's even a book named the Tree of Brooklyn, and that's the tree they're talking about. That was written in I think the 50s.
A tree grows in Brooklyn, really?
A tree grows in Brooklyn. Yeah, it's about the Atlantis tree, the Chinese tree of heaven, and it's just an invasive tree. So getting rid of it is the first great step.
So we told Jason we would take 15 minutes of his time. We have one more question about the bugs going dormant in winter. So is there anything that we can do as we get to be, I know it's hot right now where we all are, but is there anything that you suggest we can do as we go from summer to fall to winter to stop the spread?
Yeah, so this is where wintertime you're doing scouting for the egg masses and such. This is where you're looking at your cars underneath things that you might move around, smooth surfaces like that. I found them on somebody's like a commercial salt rig where they do salting, and they're salting for the winter, and he was getting it out for the winter time, and there was probably 50 egg masses that were hunkered down on this thing because it sat still and idle for the entire egg laying season. And unbeknownst to him, he goes out salt and he's got all these egg masses.
Yep.
It's kind of that, and otherwise you're looking at, like you said, managing the Atlantis trees. If you can get rid of them, great. Especially get rid of the small ones. Remember, if you do see a small one, there's always bigger ones about.
Yeah.
And then doing treatments to take care of your tree.
That is a great question. If you guys have more questions about spotted lanternfly, you can always check with Davey. I know that Davey, we posted a great blog about this information, and more importantly, call your local arborist. They will be able to answer all of your questions about this pest and how it more appropriately applies to your backyard. So, oh my gosh, we have so many other questions. All right, let me just put one more in before we get to you, Jess. So one second. So there were 2 questions about this. How do you expect it to move? And then Jason is asking, what is the rate of expansion? So it's kind of the same question. Where do we see it going? Is it moving rapidly and very fast, or is this kind of this hitchhiker bug kind of more slowly moving?
So I'd say it's moving generally fast at this point, because if you look at a small circle getting bigger, it's covering more area and bigger area, and the populations are getting larger and larger. And, at first it was in Berks County, and that was, 6 years ago, and it took that long, about an hour or so drive for it to become now a huge problem here, where you see trees entirely covered in it. But as you grow into a bigger area, there's just much more insects to mate, much more insects to move and hitchhike. And, hitchhiking spots are going to be down corridors, major corridors like 95 and interstates and things like that. And that's how it's going to spread fast. And where you see it be a problem, it's probably going to be in places like that at first, until it just naturally goes into somewhere more of the country area.
Yeah, they spread fast here. I went outside for 2 minutes and grabbed these 4 guys. And they were not so much in my backyard last year. But I am infested this year. So they certainly are moving pretty quickly. So everyone is just so saying how much you helped them today, Jason. I really appreciate it. You can visit that page that Jennifer Lennox just posted to find your local arborist. And I don't know, what are you going to do? Go squash some of those, or you need to treat that tree behind you? Show us that tree again one more time for those people just tuning in.
Yeah, I think this tree for the state, I think they're going to do some trees for trap trees, but I think this tree is probably on the list for maybe removal.
Yeah, I would say. And they're hard little buggers to catch.
They are quick, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are. Oh my gosh, so that's an infestation.
They bounce. They don't really want to leave their tree.
No, they don't, man. They must know you.
Yeah, they're comfortable with me now.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, Jason. And thanks for helping us solve this spotted lanternfly issue.
Of course. Thanks a lot for having me. And thanks everybody for listening.
All right. Take care.
All right. Pleasure.